hit subscribe and smash that like button and click the bell to get all our new content. That really helps us out. So welcome to another educational and inspiring AAM workshop. This one entitled Effective Activism, What's Holding Us Back? Have you ever wondered what the root causes of human and animal oppression are? Dr. Harsini is a first-generation immigrant, an LGBT and human rights activist from Iran. He faced life-threatening situations because of his human rights activism, which later shaped his approach to animal rights. Dr. Harsini will discuss why animal rights is a social justice movement, how it relates to animal rights activism, and how understanding this connection can make us effective activists for the victims. He will also discuss the obstacles that slow down our movement. My name is Michelle Granberg. I'm your moderator. I'm a mentor and team member with Animal Activism Mentorship. I'm located in New Jersey, and I've been a vegan and activist for 6 years. AAM's mission is to eradicate violence and build a culture of empathy and compassion, which ultimately results in animal liberation. We strive to build a global community of actors through our free 3-month mentorship program that pairs experienced activists with aspiring activists. Through one-on-one mentoring, we generate an increased number of effective activists worldwide because we know this movement needs more activists. Additionally, we offer free workshops that train and educate our mentors, mentees, and the public on various aspects of animal rights activism. We have a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour, and we host large-scale in-person activism events, which I'll tell you more about that later. AAM is proud to be fueled by FARM, the Farmed Animal Rights Movement, one of the oldest AR organizations in the country. If you're interested in applying to become a mentor or mentee or want to get involved or to donate, please visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com, and follow both AAM and FARM on social media. So that being said, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Dr. Faraz Harsini has been an animal advocate for over a decade. He is a cultivated meat bioprocessing senior scientist at GFI, an AAM mentor, and an organizer for Anonymous for the Voiceless in Austin and Houston. He is also the founder and CEO of Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, a nonprofit that mentors and supports animal advocates, particularly student organizations, and provides a unified infrastructure for sustainable and effective animal advocacy on college campuses. He closely collaborates with PETA, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and other nonprofits and advocates for abolition of cruelty to animals. He has received awards and recognitions for his contributions to science and animal advocacy, and was awarded PETA Campus Representative of the Year during his doctoral studies. He is also an avid advocate of alternatives to animal testing. So bringing all his wealth of experience and knowledge, we're so glad to have him. So Dr. Harsini, go ahead and take it away.
Hey everyone, it's really a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited, very sleep deprived, but very excited because there is no other place that I'd rather be but amongst people that are so like-minded. And all of you could do so many other things with your life, but you all decided to be here today, and also with your personal life, just dedicating your life to fighting one of the worst types of oppression in humanity. So I really appreciate what all of you are doing. And so yeah, let's get started. So I want to show you that I have been doing animal rights advocacy for about 10 years, and I've been a part of pretty much every major animal rights organization. in the US, from DXC, Vegan Outreach, PETA, Farm, Anonymous for the Voiceless, PCRM, etc. And I've been studying the movement for a while now and trying to understand what works and what doesn't work. So what I'm hoping is today to share some of the things that I've learned and to have a session that we can all learn from each other and just be more effective in what we do. So the agenda for today is, first, we're just gonna talk about why promoting veganism is the most important things that you can do with your life. So some of you probably have already realized that, but in case there are newer people, I wanna make that case. Then we're gonna talk about the intersection between human rights and animal rights. And then we're gonna talk about a few other topics, such as should we focus on environmentalism and health versus ethics, which one works the best? Then I'm gonna present to you my How Not to Die from Burnout. So that's my new book. I'm sure you've seen the book. So this is How Not to Die from Burnout. So that was a joke, by the way. Please don't sue me. That's from Michael Greger. But, and then after that, we're gonna talk about humane washing, then insecurities in humans that includes also vegans, because vegans are humans, and our relationships and how this plays a role in our activism. And at the end, we're gonna look at a couple of different ways that we all can help the movement. So first thing first, I want to say that activism, a lot of it is about what we have to do versus what we like to do. To make that case to you, I tell you that I'm an introvert, and the last thing I want to do is to go on the street and stop strangers and tell them about veganism. That's the last thing I want to do. But the only reason that I do that is because this is something that needs to be done. So I think a big mistake that I made in my life before was just trying to find something that I was really interested in doing. But when you actually focus on something that has to be done and it's important and it's high in impact, then actually when you see the impact, you get motivated, and that brings interest with it. And another thing, one of my favorite quotes is, life starts at the end of your comfort zone. So probably throughout this presentation, I will make you a little uncomfortable, and that's my job as a mentor. So that's because I believe that we can all grow and do better and learn outside of our comfort zone. To a point that if I try to practice what I preach, so to a point that if everything is okay in my life, if I'm not under stress, I start to question if I'm doing everything right. So yeah, we're gonna talk about we're going to cover a lot of things in this presentation. So first, I'm going to tell you a little about my background. So I'm from Iran. I was born and raised in Tehran. So that's me, day one, and whoever that is who's photobombing the picture. And yeah, my native language is Farsi or Persian. And I've been vegan for about 10 years. Still haven't died from protein deficiency. Yeah, I grew up in Iran, and then I did my bachelor there, and then left the country. So I told you that I want to make the case to you that doing vegan advocacy is the best thing that you can do with your life. So I started my studies with chemical engineering for my bachelor. I was working with petroleum, and during that time, the Gulf of Mexico's oil spill happened. And I was very impacted by seeing the image of what happened to animals and everything else. So I was very interested in environment. So I changed my research. Instead of petroleum, I focused on biofuel production. Then I asked myself, is this really the best thing I can do with my life? So I'm also a musician. So I started playing music for children who were suffering from cancer in cancer hospitals. Then I asked myself again, is this the best thing that I can do with my life? I was like, well, if I want to address the root cause, maybe I should do cancer research instead. And that's what I did. So I did cancer research, ended up doing my doctorate. And after that, I joined pharmaceutical companies to accelerate clinical research for cancer, inflammation, infectious diseases, including COVID and influenza. But you know what? Every time, anywhere that I looked, anything that I ever cared about, whether it was the environment, health, pandemics, antibiotic resistance, anything I cared about, had one common cause, and that was consumption of animal products. Not to mention that during this time, I also became vegan, and this whole new world opened in front of my eyes in terms of like suffering and the amount of the depth of problem and neglectedness in that area. And that's why I decided to dedicate my life to just doing full-time vegan advocacy. So I'm a bioprocessing senior scientist at GFI, and I started my own nonprofit to help students to do effective activism. And by the way, if there is any students here who wants to do effective activism in their universities, please hunt me down and get connected. So I always say that show me something that in terms of impact is bigger and more important than animal rights, statistically, morally, mathematically, ethically, it has bigger impact than veganism. And I will quit anything that I'm doing today, I will go do that. But there is not such a thing. And that's why I believe strongly, based on the experiences that I have researching the environment and health and animal rights, that there is nothing more important than this. And I think a lot of you already understand that, and that's probably why you're here. And that's why I'm very excited to be here and talking to you today. So you probably have heard of stuff on the news about Iran, lots of things going on. So I'm gonna talk to you about human rights and my experience back in Iran and how that connects with my vision for animal rights. So if you haven't heard, in Iran, a couple of months ago, a 22-year-old woman, Mahsa Amini, she was arrested and beaten to death by morality police, quote unquote, for having improper hijab. And that basically started lots of protests. And as we are talking today, a lot of strong men and women are on the streets fighting for basic human rights. Now, this is not the first time that there is a protest in Iran. This is my undergrad university, University of Tehran, and you can see the main entrance gate there. So in 2009, when I was back in Iran working on my undergrad, I was a part of one of these big protests against the government. It was a very peaceful protest. We just gathered and we were asking for basic human rights. And as you can see, police started throwing tear gas at us, and things just escalated really quickly after that. So this person, his name is Ali, one of my friends, all he did was, as we were protesting peacefully, he just walked in front of the gate and he showed us a peace sign. That's all he did. And next thing I knew, paramilitary forces attacked him and started beating him in the head with batons. And not one person, but like 4 or 5. And I really don't have the right word to describe the emotion that when it happens in front of your eyes, but it's very emotional, knowing that every hit could literally kill this person. And here we are trapped on the other side of the gate and trying to open it and like save our friends, but we couldn't. And we were being tear gassed, and just the sound of him screaming and the tear gas and like the smell of iron from the gate, I can still remember that. This is an experience that I never forget, and I never want this to happen ever again in my life. But remember this because I want to come back to it. So as I was thinking that this day couldn't get any worse, this actually caused the protests to escalate from there. And what happened next was that paramilitary forces broke inside the university. And students scattered, and I was trying to find my friends. Next thing I know, there's a guy in front of me with a machete, maybe 15 or 20 feet away. And I froze for a second because I couldn't process that. Is this a friend? Is it like, and then the guy just raised the machete and said a very bad word, which is probably the best bad word that I've ever heard, because I was like, that is not a friend. And I ran as fast as I could. I've never run that fast in my life. In fact, that's probably the closest that I've ever come to actually getting killed. This is an experience that I never forget. I wanted to share with you this because I want to come back to it. Now, here's something else that I wanted to share with you. I'm from Iran, like I said, and I'm gay. And I think one of my biggest regrets is the time in my life that was wasted growing up, and being oppressed as an LGBT in Iran. As you probably know, homosexuality is punishable by death in Iran. And something that I remember is that from really, young ages, I knew that I was attracted to guys, but I always suppressed that feeling because I thought this was just immoral. I thought I was like sick. I thought something was just wrong with me. I thought that I'd just grow up and then go away. Maybe if I have a girlfriend, it'll just go away. Spoiler alert, it didn't. But it was really difficult to just, I guess I wish that I knew and I accepted myself and I just kept it a secret. But the fact that I was fighting myself and never accepted myself for almost 21 or 22 years, that's one of my biggest regrets. And in fact, when I finally came out, that was probably one of the most liberating feelings in my life. It almost felt like I was swimming with like bags of stone attached to my arms and legs. And I finally let go of that. So I was working at this cancer center. I finally had the courage to come out to one of my colleagues for the first time. And I said, hey, Ash, I'm gay. And he said, well, duh. I was like, how could you tell? He was like, well, just look at the clothes that you're wearing. I bet you can find a parrot that matches your clothes. And we are scientists, so we had to test the hypothesis. And he was not wrong. Her name is Maral. One day she came to me and she said, Faraz, you can't say that you love animals and you eat them too. And she said that in a very nice way, but I still got upset. I didn't talk to her for a couple of months. I was like, ouch, how dare you challenging my morality, just a typical non-vegan response, I guess. Something that I want to point out here is that my friend was not afraid of upsetting me. She, in fact, said that in the nicest way, and I still got upset. So what I'd like you to notice is that a lot of times you hear activists talking about effectiveness of their action based on whether the other side gets upset or not. But I want to tell you that that is not a good measure of your effectiveness, because in this case, my friend wasn't even rude. She said that in the nicest way, and I still got offended. So it's not about how you say it. If people want to get offended, they will, and it's not on you. You are not responsible for how people feel. You're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for your intentions, but you're not responsible for how other people feel. So if my friend, if Maral was worried that I would get upset and she didn't speak the truth, I wouldn't be here today talking to you. So let that be a lesson for all of us. So yeah, she said that and I was like, wow, she's right. I always said that I cared about humans. I was very furious when this was happening to my friend. When my friend was being beaten in the head, with batons, but I didn't care when this was happening to animals. In fact, even when I knew about this, I said, sorry, animals, I just love meat so much, you know, I can never go even vegetarian. I'm very ashamed of myself for ever thinking that way, but you know, there is a clear cognitive dissonance here. I always said that hanging people for who they are was wrong and we shouldn't hang gay people for who they are. But apparently I was completely okay with hanging chickens upside down and cutting their throat. I was involved with a lot of human rights and women's rights activism, but I consume dairy, and I don't know any industry that is as abusive as dairy is. Really, like sexually abusing females of other species, and I don't know any industry that is as bad as dairy. Yet I was trying to say, oh, look at me, I'm open-minded, and you know, I fight for women's rights and all of that. So it made me wonder, why is there such a disconnect between human rights and animal rights? I guess I always thought I was a good person, you know, I try to help people, but how did I miss something so big? Let me tell you a story. So this is me as a kid again. I had a chicken and he grew up to become a big rooster. We named him Mr. Happy. Literally the English word for happy. Happy was probably the first English word that I learned. And I kind of look like a potato here. But Happy was a little loud, so we had to give him to my grandma, who had a bigger yard, to take care of him for us. And I loved going there and just like looking for him and all of that. So one day I go there and I'm, you know, looking for Happy, can't find him. And I ask my grandma, hey grandma, where is Happy? And she says, oh dear Faraz, I'm so sorry. The door was left open when I was cleaning the cage and he ran away. I was really shocked and upset. You know, first of all, I love this animal. And second, I loved him so much that I never thought that he would betray me. I thought he would never leave me. And so I would just go around the neighborhood trying to find him. And, you know, looked for him for 2 weeks and couldn't find him. And some like 10 years later, my mom is talking to me and just casually mentions that, yeah, the chicken soup we had that day. So my grandma killed the individual that meant so much to me and fed him to me and lied about it. And I felt like she abused my childhood innocence, she abused my trust and all of that. To date, I have a hard time forgiving her. But the crazy thing about that is that day I knew I had chicken, but I was happy because I thought it wasn't Mr. Happy. So again, going back to this cognitive dissonance. So makes me wonder, why is that? Why is there such a disconnect between human rights and animal rights? The answer is speciesism and cognitive dissonance. Speciesism is the discrimination against members of other species based on the false assumption of human supremacy. And cognitive dissonance is when we say we love animals and we eat them. So when I do outreach, I think it's really important to make this case when we have time. As activists also think about animal rights as a form of injustice. So human rights doesn't mean that humans are identical, of course. We understand that we are different. We have different sex, we have different races, different sexual orientation. But what we realize is that it doesn't matter. These differences are not morally relevant to the way we should be treated. The question is not really with whom I make love. The only relevant factor is if you stab me, it will hurt. And if you oppress me, I will suffer. In fact, in the history of humanity, every time we focused on our differences, that's exactly how we justified sexism, racism, homophobia, and so many other things. And today we are doing the exact same thing when it comes to species, other species. So animal rights doesn't mean that other animals are identical to us. Of course not. It doesn't mean that a cow is identical to a chicken, identical to a human. Yes, a human might be smarter, but a dog can smell better, can hear better. So obviously we are different, but we realize again that our differences are not morally relevant. And I have a version of Speciesism for Dummies, which basically says, animal rights doesn't mean that a cow should vote. All it means is that if you stab me, it hurts. And if you stab a cow, it hurts. And I think by comparing animal rights and human rights, a lot of times we can have a very effective advocacy. So this is a flowchart that I helped design for Anonymous for the Voiceless. And the way that it generally works is that on the TV, we show the footage of industries that abuse animals. And the first question is, how does this footage make you feel? And most people, unless they're a psychopath or they're trolling, they would say they feel terrible about it. And then we kind of ask, so is it safe to say that you're against animal cruelty? And they say, oh yeah, of course. And then we say, then do you think it's possible to be against animal cruelty and consume animal products at the same time? There are two ways this can go. If they're honest, they would say, no, it's not possible. And you basically help them to go vegan. But the other possibility is that they go to what I call circle of excuses. That's where plants though, proteins though, all of that starts. You know all about it. And by the way, if you need this flowchart, please contact me. I'll be happy to share with you the high resolution. But when we respond to excuses, do you know what the most common objections that we get are for against veganism? One, what if they were treated better, so more humanely? And second, okay, fine, you're right, I'm just gonna reduce my animal consumption. So for us as activists, it's important to think about this as any other form of oppression. And sometimes by giving people examples, they can see your point. For instance, I say, well, if I was beating a child and you were telling me that this is wrong, because we already accepted that this is wrong. And I said, fine, I'm not gonna beat this kid on Mondays. No beating Mondays. Would you accept that? And they generally laugh because it just sounds stupid. And then you ask them, so if it's not acceptable for any other form of injustice, why is it suddenly a sound solution here? And there are different things that we can always discuss. There is the environmental impacts, the antibiotic resistance, which is a huge thing. And then there is the health aspects. So a lot of times, reducing meat consumption can be effective when we're talking about health, when we are talking about the environment. But something that I heard from Paul Bashir kind of forever changed the way I talk about environment. I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about the environment, and I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about health. There are cases that we should certainly help people to make the connection that way. And I do acknowledge that there are people who are today, they're animal rights activists, but they started learning about veganism or at least plant-based diet from health and environmental aspects. So I don't deny that. But to me, it's like this cartoon that somebody is getting shot and the driver is worried about the 5-star review, and it's like, millions of animals are just dying in the worst kind of pain, and here we are talking about the environment. And in most cases, it's not because we care about the animals, it's because we care about the environment being so ruined that it affects us. Something that I heard that kind of completely changed my perspective is just imagine a group of people are committing a genocide, and I go to them and I say, hey guys, like thinking that if I advocate for the victims, they would not listen to me. So I go to them and I say instead, hey guys, you're burning people here and it's kind of bad for the environment and it's just like polluting the air. So if we can just like tone it down a little bit and maybe, so we can like catch up with our Paris Agreement 2040, that would be awesome. If you're offended with that comparison, you should be, because it is offensive. When sometimes the solutions we have for animal rights, if you do it for any other form of injustice, it becomes laughable or offensive. So for us as activists, it's really important to know that we are defending the victims and always have them in mind. So when you're advocating for animals, remember you're advocating for individuals, for victims, and against injustice. So do a thought experiment for me, please. Put yourself in place of one of these people who is being hanged for being gay. Imagine this was you. Would you want me to stay here and say, hey, let's just reduce the number of people we kill. Let's just kill the guy in the left and just like let the guy on the right go. Or maybe the rope is kind of hurting their neck, right? Maybe we just use a better material so as they're being hanged, it just doesn't hurt their neck that much. Do you like that? Or would you like me to stay here and say killing people for who they are is wrong and it needs to stop immediately? I don't know about you, but I rather the latter to advocate for me. So be that guy when you advocate for animals. Think about that pig who's waiting to be slaughtered, right? If you were in their place, would you want someone to say, let's reduce the amount of bacon that we are consuming and replace it with chicken, or maybe like, let's just get rid of the cages, but still eat pigs? Do you like that person, or the person who stops the trucks, who records this, shows it to the world, and tries to inform everyone and encourages everyone to stop animal consumption altogether? So when you have victims in mind and talk about ethics, there are a couple of benefits. One is you never cheat on your ethics. How many of you have been on diet before and you cheated on diet? I know I have. But how many of you were so hungry even before going vegan that you just look at your dog and you're just like, sorry, circle of life, I'm just gonna eat you? Never, because once we think that something is ethically wrong, there is so much pressure against it for us to not do it. It's also possible that a lot of people go vegan faster when they think about the ethics, the moment that they can sympathize or empathize with the victims. And a lot of people who go back from veganism, it's just because they're looking at it as a diet, not as a lifestyle. They think about it as something good for the environment or health. It's also important to realize that when you talk about ethics, people who become vegan are much more likely to become an activist like yourself. I mean, really think about it. How many vegan activists do you know who are, I guess, how many animal rights activists do you know who are like reducitarian or flexitarian, whatever that means, right? Not many. So if we really want to expand our movement, we need more vegans and we need more vegan advocates. And here is something that I disagree with Peter Singer. Peter Singer says that if you're on a plane and the only food that they give you is, animal products and there's nothing else to eat, it's okay. It's actually vegan to eat that. And I disagree. I understand his logic or lack thereof, which the way he's thinking is probably that if we don't eat this, in reality, we are not going to save any animals. And that is true. And I agree with that part. But once I asked Twitter, what made you vegan? And one person said that I went out and with a bunch of colleagues, and one person ate only salads. And I asked why. And she said, I'm vegan and there is no other options. So the fact that that day she rejected animal products made another vegan, and now her children are vegan, right? So if this person was flexitarian or reducitarian, whatever that means, this person would never had that opportunity to go vegan. So we have to use every opportunity we get to fight for animals. And one of that is rejecting animal products in any opportunity. And also you'll be obviously consistent. So if you are talking about human rights and you say that you're not racist and you hate other forms of human oppression, that way you are also consistent with being against speciesism. One of the best techniques to get people see what you see is to change their perspective. And this is really powerful. So this is a dog that I rescued, which I just use this as an excuse to show it to you. It has really nothing to do with something that I'm gonna talk to you about, except the dog part. But one day I was doing outreach and this guy came to me and said, yeah, I agree with everything you say, but you know, sometimes it's like 2 a.m. I can't find vegan food outside and, you know, I don't have food at home and it's just like really hard. And so I have to eat whatever there is. And I said, first of all, is it harder for you to just plan ahead or even sleep hungry? Or is it harder for those animals to go through what they do in factory farms? And second, how many times has it happened to you that you were so hungry, all the stores were closed and you just didn't have any food and you looked down at your dog and you said, well, sorry, buddy, this is it, circle of life, I'm eating you. And he laughed. And when you say that to people, they laugh. So that shows you that their perspective is different when they still look at animals as food. So if you can change that perspective, that's very powerful. And to show you that, let me give you another example. Sometimes I'm invited to talk to LGBT clubs at universities. Generally, it's like talking about careers or whatever. Little they know the whole thing is gonna be about veganism, poor things. But I showed them this picture and I said, so what do you think about this? They said, well, that looks tasty. And then I said, what about now? Nothing changed except that I just gave them a little more information about where this food comes from. Now, because they are aware of all the atrocities that Chick-fil-A commits against LGBT rights, now they want to have nothing to do with this food. Suddenly, it stops being tasty. And they feel like if they buy this, they're contributing to LGBT oppression. So that's the power of when you change people's perspective. I have 3 good questions for you, how to help people to change their perspective. Take a screenshot, take a picture with your phone from this, but these are my top 3 questions. And they are almost troll-free. Every time I say that, it resonates with people. So number 1 is, would you recommend whatever you're recommending, like baby steps, reducitarian approach or whatever, for any other form of oppression? I guess a quick side note, should we make comparison with Holocaust or rape victims and things like that? My personal opinion on that is we shouldn't overdo it, but also we shouldn't not use the right words to describe something that is happening because we are afraid that people may get defensive. But of course, we shouldn't overuse it, I think. But there are also other ways to make the connection without saying these words. For instance, you can say, can you think of any other form of oppression in the past where this was the case? Where oppression was legal and normal in the society, and they already think about slavery without you saying it. Or you can give the example of beating a child. So if I was beating a child, would you be okay if I reduce the amount of times I beat my child? And they would tell you no, without getting upset. The second question is, if you were in their place, how urgently would you want the abuse to stop? This is really powerful. So at the end of almost every conversation that I have, when I ask them, so after our conversation, are you gonna go vegan? They're gonna say, yeah, you made some good points, I'm gonna think about it or whatever. It's really important to ask them to put themselves in place of animals and sense the urgency. So I say, if you were in their place, or even an animal that you care about, and someone was abusing you, how urgently would you want that to stop? And 100% of the time, people say like immediately. And then you ask them to treat this the same way. And the third one is it harder for you to go vegan, or is it harder for animals to be abused and killed? I have a slide to talk about my own burnout experience. I'm gonna come back to this last question. This is another graph that I've designed for AV to use, just so that activists can kind of visualize what happens when we talk about veganism to non-vegans. Suddenly, there is like a dumpster fire in their brain. It's not their fault, but they want to really justify their behavior with the closest justification or excuse that they can reach. And they're just going to throw a bunch of things at you. They're going to say, oh, what about religion? What about PETA? You guys must be from PETA. Oh, it's a problem with system. You can't do anything about it. Plants have feelings. Or what about that indigenous guy in Alaska? The brain just explodes. It's your job as an activist to not get distracted and realize these are just deflections. And your job is to refocus this to personal accountability and bring it back to victims, especially when they come up with these hypotheticals. This is a really tricky thing. And I've seen a lot of activists losing the control of the conversation and letting the other person lead them to wherever they are going. For instance, saying that, this is not practical because there are indigenous people and they have no other way. Just watch that. Like all the time, they just come up with hypotheticals. Another one is, what you're showing is clearly wrong, but there is a good way to do this. But the guy clearly notices that where he gets his food from is not that happy, good place hypothetical that he's talking about. So it's your job not to go there, not to get distracted, and bring it back to personal accountability, that we are not talking about indigenous people. We are talking about you. There are vegan options around you. What stops you from going vegan and not being the reason that animals are being abused? Okay, so a couple of years ago, I actually had a burnout. And I think one of the best things that happened was joining Anonymous for the Voiceless. And that kind of changed the way that I looked at animal advocacy. Now that I look back, one of the reasons that I burned out was because I wasted a lot of time talking to people who were not ready to listen. Just remember that if someone is pretending to be asleep, there is nothing that we can do. If they're willingly ignorant, there is nothing we can do. So save your time and energy for minds and hearts that you can change. The second problem that I had was I was trying to pander. I was always trying to be on their side instead of animal side. This ended up really costing a lot on my mental health, and it was my fault. So why? Because, I'll give you an example. So I'm showing horrible things that are happening to animals. This person comes to me and he's talking about cheese, that vegan cheese is bad. Now inside I'm angry because I'm seeing this atrocity and this person in front of me is talking about cheese and the texture of cheese. But what I would do back then was trying to explain that vegan food can actually taste good and it's not bad, and like any other product you can find, you have to just try different brands and find whatever works or whatever, and would never just like actually refer to the actual victims. And the fact that I had them in my mind, but I didn't speak it, was the cause of this burnout. Today, all I do when someone says, vegan cheese, or it's hard to go vegan, there's not enough vegan food or whatever, all I ask them is it harder for you to be vegan, or is it harder for the animals? And this is troll-free. Everyone says, no, I mean, of course, when you put it that way, yeah, it's harder for the animals. Change their perspective. Also, it's important to notice that it's not really what you say, it's how you say it. So I call people hypocrite a bunch of times during my outreach, but they don't get offended. In fact, in the past, I was trying to just be so friendly and nice and like smile, and which is another reason that I was like burning out, because I am upset because this is happening to animals, but I'm trying to put up like a smiley face and try to be nice. And it was fake. And it's almost like people can tell that this is fake and you're not being real. But when you're real and you speak the truth, I'm not saying that you should be rude, but I'm saying that when you speak the truth the way it needs to be spoken, it almost feels like they can see that, like real sees real, and it resonates with them. And it's counterintuitive, but when you practice it, you see what I mean, because you get so much better results. So for instance, how do I call them hypocrites? So I say, you told me yourself you don't like animal abuse. You told me yourself you're against animal abuse. But with your action, you're causing this. And sorry, I'm just pointing at this. It's always the TV here. But so your actions and your values are not aligned. What do you call a person whose actions and values are not aligned? And they will tell me hypocrite. And then like, yeah, exactly. I was a hypocrite once. And once you notice, you can do something about it. So yeah, and like I mentioned, not talking about the victims and talking about the environment and health, as I know that the real victims here are the animals. So I want to dedicate this one slide to welfarism and this kind of approach. I think when we talk about like human rights, welfarism for humans means that we improve the quality of living. But somehow when we talk about animals, it's all about improving the quality of killing. And I think there is an inherent speciesist point of view in that line of thinking. I, of course, understand the reasoning behind welfarism. There are reasons, and I personally have friends who work in organizations that do that, and I trust their intentions. But I think the method has serious flaws. So I'm gonna just tell you the other side so you can just, so you have both sides and can decide by yourself or for yourself. So it changes the discussion from animal liberation to temporary measures. So one of the arguments for welfarism is that it brings the discussion to the table, that people are now more aware of animal cruelty issues in factory farms and etc. And I would be happy, of course, I don't want animals to suffer. I want them to suffer less until we reach final animal liberation. But the way it's working today is that it's completely changing the discussion to this very short-sighted vision that let's just remove the cages. And we are not even talking about animal liberation at all. Another argument is that, well, when we do cage-free or, campaigns and stuff like that, the price of food goes up. I understand the logic and it sounds logical, but in reality, it doesn't work that well. What if in the future, we came up with better ways to kill animals that are cheaper? What if we genetically modified animals to reproduce faster? What if we came up with better slaughterhouses that killed animals even faster with fewer workers? And that way we reduce the cost. What about that? What are we gonna do? And also, what if we just started importing meat from other companies that can produce it cheaper? And I'm sure China will be one of them, right? And another problem is that it happens like a cycle that happens all the time. So there are like cage-free campaigns, a lot of pressure on these companies to go cage-free. And they say, okay, we commit, quote unquote, to go cage-free 5 years from now in 2040. And all these companies celebrate, they raise more money, they do all the PR work, and everyone is happy for this success. And then next thing you know, it's 2040 and the company just says, well, sorry, they just ditch. And this recently happened. So there is no actual commitment for these companies to actually stick with what they say they will do. And why is that? Because these industries are fundamentally based on benefiting from exploitation of animals. So how can we ever expect them to consider the well-being of animals? Another thing is, I showed you that every time I talk about veganism to people, they say, yeah, this is bad. It just has to happen a little more humanely, right? So giving them all these labels that don't really mean much for animals, it just makes people feel better about bad choices. And it just makes them, it makes it harder for them to go vegan. Another quick tip here is that in your advocacy, try to replace factory farming with animal consumption. Because if you're against speciesism, which I suppose you are, our problem is not really factory farming, it's exploitation of animals in any way and form. And so our goal is animal liberation. Our goal is not going from factory farming to backyard chickens. Then you see programs such as Meatless Monday. I'm not a huge fan of these because first of all, it almost suggests that the problem is meat and not egg and dairy. And second, it suggests that let's just do the right thing on Mondays, and exploiting animals bad on Mondays, okay on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And another problem is that you never see these programs to go from Meatless Monday to Meatless Monday and Tuesday. What is the alternative? When you work on making dining halls go 50%, 60% plant-based, then that's a number that you can keep increasing. It also kind of suggests that there is a right way to kill an animal. So, there is nothing wrong with consumption of animal products. It's just the way that they're being treated. And lastly, I want to make this case to you that most of money in animal rights movement is going towards welfarist approach. We already don't have that much money, and almost all of it is going towards that. And for the reasons I mentioned, I don't think it's as effective as these people want to believe it is. So the neglected part is actually animal rights activists like yourself to speak the truth, show the truth, and fight for animals, thinking about them as the real victims. And that's why, my friends, when you go to Whole Foods or dining halls, university dining halls, it's full of signs that, like this, how animals are raised matters. Humane certified, grass-fed, organic, all these marketing labelings, all of it for people to feel better about bad choices. And we need activists like you to go out there and show the truth. And something I wanted to mention at the beginning is the reason I'm a mentor at AAM is because it's no longer enough for us to be vegan. We need activists. We need people who go out of their way to bring this truth to public. So what are some of the ways to help the movement? So donate your time, money, careers, and skills. So, from working on sanctuaries, from doing AV cubes, I don't care what you do, find something that is effective, do it. If you don't have time, you have money, that's also a great way to contribute to the movement. Careers is one of the most important things that I love to help people. So if you have the opportunity, no matter at what stage in your life you are, you can always think about changing your careers so you're full-time working on animal rights movement. And lastly, if you can't change your careers, you can always donate your skills. I have the Vegan Activist here. I love their website. They're an amazing organization, and I donate to them personally. So you can go to this link in the bottom, Vegan Activist Playground. Over there, if you're good at programming, if you're good at designing a website, whatever you're good at, you can offer that to other vegan activists who need your help, and vice versa. So if you need their help, feel free to go there, post an ad, and somebody will help you. They've gone above and beyond to help me and my nonprofit already. Another thing that I really want to emphasize is please write reviews. Imagine if every single vegan who went to a restaurant and didn't get the good, vegan option wrote a review. That business would either go out of business or they would just have vegan food by now. But most of us just, complain about it and, get angry. Don't just complain, do something about it, write reviews. If it's a vegan restaurant, help them. If it's a non-vegan restaurant, complain about it. One good way of saying that is, I came here with a group of people, but we're not gonna come back, name a competitor, say that there is this other vegan restaurant that we're gonna go to, but we are happy to come back as soon as you have good options. So write reviews. And talked about vegan activists. All right, we're almost done. So I mentioned something about insecurities and relationships and how it relates to animal rights activism. So this is kind of a personal point of view that I want to share with you. The way I look at this is the same way that we grow up in the society and everybody shows us the picture of meat, and before we know it, they're shoving meat in our mouth. And it's until like years later that you look back, you're like, wow, I never even chose this by myself. I see the same trend with like dating and having a partner and getting married. From the day, from our childhood, from the earliest memories we have, from the cartoons, from the Disney movies, from literally every movie and series, there's always that couple, there's always that like happy couple. And then you always see all this like marketings, like, this person is my other half, suggesting that you're missing a half. This person is my plus one, as if, having another person with you always automatically makes you a better person, or you're still missing something. And I see that in a lot of people who just feel like insecure, as if like they're, if they be lonely, they're gonna be sad. We keep saying like sad and lonely. So for people who care about animals and, especially like vegans and activists, we are already a minority, and it's really easy for us to compromise our values. So sometimes we put our superficial desire over animals and, what's the right thing to do. And I'm not here to tell anyone, what to do with their relationships, but maybe just a good measure of how healthy that relationship is to think if it's empowering you or is it holding you back. And the reason I mentioned that today, and I think it's important enough to discuss, is because a lot of activists come to me and I feel like they have that fire to fight for animals and they want to do that, and that's their value. But they have this insecurity that if they do that, then they may lose their partner. So our fears are what basically hold us back most of the time. To give you an example, like I had a very good and stable job in a pharmaceutical company. The time that I wanted to move to, nonprofit world, I felt insecure. I was like, am I gonna mess up my life? And just so you know, I don't have anyone else. I don't have a family here. If I screwed up my life, that would be it. I don't have a single family member here in the US. So I was really nervous about it, but I knew that it was the right thing to do, to join GFI and start my own nonprofit. And I can't be happier. In fact, every time you think about any relationship that you ended before, You probably don't regret it today, but at the time before it happened, you were so nervous and felt like insecure. So again, it's not to say what you should or shouldn't do with your relationships. All I'm saying is don't let anyone, including your fears and insecurities, hold you back from what you believe to be the right thing to do. And like I mentioned earlier, my job is here to push you a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And it's all because I care about you and animals, and I'd like to help you to step out of your comfort zone. So this is my favorite quote from MLK: "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So there is a last thought experiment I'd like you to do. Think about any social leader that you admire. It could be MLK, it could be Gandhi, anyone. Just pick one person that you really admire. Then think, do you like this person because they diluted their message, because they try to appeal to masses, because they try to just say something that people like to hear, and so that they can just raise more money and more donations? Or do you like them because they spoke the truth, even when they were in minority, even when people very much didn't like what they said, they still said the right thing, they even went to jail for it, but they didn't compromise for the victims, and they didn't settle for anything less than abolition of discrimination and violence? Probably for the latter. And I believe that's why they won. So know that MLK and Gandhi, they didn't really have superpower. All they had was trust in doing the right thing and saying the right thing. So I hope that I could make a case to you that animal advocacy is the best thing that you can do with your life. And once you personally believe that there is something that you have to do, when you think that there is something that needs to be said and no one else is saying it, it's on you to do the right thing. And don't let anyone stop you. And that being said, I'm here to help you with anything you will ever need. If you want to contact me, here are my contact information. Shoot me a message anywhere. And again, if you know any students who wants to do effective advocacy in universities, please send them to me. I want to help them and basically build an infrastructure in universities so that there is a sustainable and effective animal advocacy at all time. So with that, I'm gonna end, and thank you so much for listening to me, and sorry again about the power. So yeah, let's take questions and have a discussion.
All right. That was so good. I don't know. I don't know everybody else. I got a lot out of that, and I feel really energized and inspired. I feel like I could listen even more all night. And I'm having such great thoughts about my outreach. But let's open it up right now for questions. If you have a question, two things you can do is, one, you can put it in the chat. We'll try to get to all your questions, or you can hit the hand raise icon, which you can find under reactions, I believe. Anybody have a question for Faraz? Okay, Yasira, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hi, that was a really good presentation. It was inspiring. Thank you. You were talking about how you were involved with DXE, and I was on a Zoom call with them, and they did like a presentation thing, and they were talking about how their style is more focusing on like attacking the industries and the system, and how people like non-vegans are just like they're brainwashed. But do you think it's more important to focus on the system when it comes to lessening the pain of non-human animals, or the individuals? I think it's equal.
I think I agree with you. I think one of the major problems in our movement is those who work on policies and changing the system, they completely say that individual activism doesn't work and vice versa. But we need definitely both of them. But really the society is made of people. So these future politicians are gonna come from us. And if you really think about people who made big changes in the system, there were people like Eric Adams or Cory Booker, and they may not even be just like vegan. Some of them are just like plant-based, and you can see how much influence they had. But sometimes you're also focusing on politicians who are not vegan. They may play and just say, oh yeah, I got you, you vote for me. Then they take office and, just like any other politician, they just lie. So it's important to realize that having more vegans is one of the most important things that we need. And the only way that we can do that is by doing individual activism. And to that, I also add that a lot of people who criticize individual activism as something that just doesn't work, and some of them are the leaders of very big nonprofits today, became vegan because of PETA. So today they actually criticize PETA, but the reason that they were vegan to begin with today is because of PETA. So that just emphasizes the fact that it's really important to have both. But of course, we can't put all of our emphasis on future generation and working on system and completely miss making new vegans, because eventually we need numbers and politicians, and it's really hard to change policies when you don't have enough people to take action. I hope that makes sense, but that's a great question.
Thank you for such a great question. Okay, so next, does anybody else have a question? Or even a comment? Or a shout out? Or anybody? I don't know. Sorry, I'm just checking the
I'd like to respond to one of the comments by Nancy, I think, because I think that's a very great point, I think. So I do agree that when somebody is taking a baby step, for them, it would be easier to, of course, to go vegan if they're already like 90% like plant-based. If they reduce animal products by 90%, of course, it would be easier for them to go vegan than someone who doesn't know anything about it. So no one says that, but as activists, we have certain amount of energy and resources. Where should we put that energy? Should we advocate? So Earthling had said something that I really liked, which was, I think, in response to something similar to that, like reducitarian. I think that was a response to that, that when we advocate for veganism, people still have the option to reduce and take baby steps. But if we advocate, if we as activists advocate for baby steps, we are just losing the entire thing. And I think also it's kind of disrespectful that, like, I don't believe in you as much to do the right thing, to go fully vegan and not abuse animals. And I'm just the solution that I'm offering to you is taking baby steps. So I think there is a difference to be made. So what I'm talking about for the most part is where we as activists put our resources. And another thing to remember is that those people who take baby steps, it's honestly really easy to convince them to go fully vegan by methods that I mentioned. Like if you were being abused, would you like the abuser to take baby steps? And they would tell you no. But if you don't have that conversation and all you're hoping is taking baby steps, you're never gonna say that to them. You're just gonna be happy and say, oh, you're taking baby steps, good for you, And I'm not saying we shouldn't encourage people who are trying to do better. Of course, we have to encourage them, but that shouldn't be our goal, that what I do is that's amazing. You're doing great, but what's stopping you from going fully vegan? Have you considered like what if it was happening to you? So I do encourage them, but I also still keep pushing them because that's the only way that we can do better. And always remember that our resources are limited. And the question is, how do we want to, spend these resources? And back to the last thing I say, back to what I was saying is, when you focus on full veganism, animal rights advocacy, it's more likely for you to make another activist. And more activists will make more vegans. And this is something that you wouldn't get, or it would be much slower if you just advocate for, baby steps or, reducing, etc. Good question, though. I hope that answers the question.
We have a couple of hands raised, and then we'll go back to the chat for some questions. Laura, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Okay, so there's a situation here in New Hampshire where there's a gentleman, I'll try to be concise. There's a gentleman who's in custody right now. His name is Brendan Elwell. And a couple of years ago, he was found to have been mutilating cats and kittens. He was arrested, taken into custody. He had a hearing. It was postponed. The next hearing before the Ossipee Superior Court is coming up this Monday. I went to his previous hearing. I intend to come to the hearing on Monday. My feeling is, so I'm sitting in a room full of courtroom staff. A guy comes in accused of doing these heinous crimes. He's a symptom. I just want to know what everybody thinks. This is a man who was created by the very system that is being overseen by the people who are judging him. What I call it now, I have a name for it. It's the animal violence spectrum. The entire society cringes at certain types of animal mutilation and cruelty, and the hair on the back of their heads will stand up, and then they're going to go home, and they're directly or indirectly responsible for the same thing. So how do I really want to try to talk to the judge, and I wrote an email to he's called a forensic psychiatrist. Like, why do we even need forensic psychiatrists So I just was wondering what somebody's thoughts are about the fact that I feel like everybody's on the animal violence spectrum, and this guy, Brendan Elwell, who's in custody for it, is just a symptom of the system that created him.
Faraz, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I don't know what the question was exactly. Can you summarize the question? That was more like a comment, I guess.
Aren't we? Isn't capitalist society, in large part, all guilty of being violent and cruel to animals and morally schizophrenic?
Okay, yeah, got it.
Because you know what I mean?
I don't want to talk about like different ways to govern the government, but I would say that the problem is not capitalism, is the greediness of people. And as long as we live our lives the way we do, as long as we put our selfish benefits over other animals or other people's well-being, no matter what the system is, we end up in the same place just because that's our nature. So as long as we have this thirst for consumption or overconsumption and selfishness, regardless of the system, it could be the best system ever, but we get the same results. Yeah.
So there was a question in the chat about dog food, which I think the question was just, in an outreach situation, what do you maybe typically say when someone says that they have to feed meat to their dog?
Awesome question, one of my favorites. Notice they do not care about dogs. They're trying to distract you. Don't get distracted. First thing you have to say is that, so are you vegan? Did you stop abusing all these animals? And the last thing that is left is your problem with dog food. And I guarantee you it's not. They do the same thing with honey. So what about honey? Do you guys not consume honey? Know that their problem is not honey. They just want to distract you. Your job is not to get distracted, bring it back. So yeah, whenever you go fully vegan and the only thing that is left is dog food, then come back to me, we talk about dog food.
Okay, yes, I agree. Don't get distracted. We'll say that over and over again. Cool. So Yasira, did you have another question? Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes. So obviously you have people that say they're vegan, speaking up about non-human animal testing, including bugs, when it comes to makeup, cosmetics, and stuff like that. But when it comes to vaccines, they don't. They do test them on dogs and rabbits and stuff. So I just don't know why a lot of vegans don't speak up about that also, because I don't believe it's justified for saving the human species to, rape and torture them.
I personally fully agree with your assessment. And the solution, however, I think is to focus on what happens next, to try to advocate for alternatives to animal testing, to bring more awareness about animal testing. And we know that the system is broken in so many ways. You have factory farming, you have like fur, and then in biomedical industries, you have so many different things. And vaccine is one of the 100 things, 100 ways in biopharma alone that we abuse animals, right? So from that spectra, there are things that are completely and easily replaceable, such as cosmetics, and we are still doing it. So to me, working on this side of spectra, which is gonna be the hardest, where we have all these majority of cases where it's absolutely unnecessary, even for human survival, and we already have replacement. So if anything that we have to focus on, I think it just makes sense to focus on these and just try to change the system over time. But I agree with you. Nothing justifies hurting animals.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for your answer. Anybody else? Julie, you had your hand up before. Did you still have a question? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, hi. I had a question regarding one of your points earlier when you said that it's not just what you say, but how you say it. And I remember that in a training that I had with AV, they recommended having a neutral tone. And yeah, I was wondering if that's also what you advocate, that we try to have a neutral tone, like not aggressive, not sympathetic, but just like neutral, just saying the facts, and how you maintain that when sometimes you feel angry or exasperated with how the conversation is going.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I guess it just makes sense to start with a neutral voice and neutral position. So like I said, I do not encourage anyone to, when I say the right thing, don't think about people getting upset. I'm not encouraging people to be rude or to be angry. So neutral position is a great position because you're not trying to pander. At the same time, you're not trying to be angry. And you're just there to speak the truth. I think that's a great start. But that's not to say that there are cases that it's completely depends on the person, that I might sound a little more serious, or there are cases that I may be a little friendlier. And I give you an example. Like there was a guy who said, yeah, I have no feeling about what you're showing on the TV. Like it just doesn't make me feel anything. And I thought that this is a troll, and our policy is that if it's a troll, we don't get engaged. We try once, and if they're still trolling, we don't get engaged. So I tried again, and he was like, no sympathy or whatever. And at that point, I was like, I'm not gonna even try to even remotely sound nice. So as directly as I could, I said, the only people that I know who have no sympathy or empathy for animals getting killed are actual psychopaths. And I don't think you are a psychopath. I think you are just resisting. And I said that to end the conversation. And that's actually what broke through. And he was like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I was like, if you're standing here telling me that if you step on a dog foot and the dog yelps and you're like, well, you just like don't even move. I don't think you are being genuine. I think you're just being defensive. And I said that just to end the conversation. Little I knew that started the conversation. And by the end, he opened up and we had a very good conversation. So that, you know, that's just to say that sometimes depending on the person, you may adjust how you're talking to them. Some people like to be a little more direct. Some people, the moments that you're too direct, they get defensive. They feel like they're being talked down. That's why I think it's a good start to be neutral and keep it neutral as much as possible. But as long as we are really talking about the victims and we are not pandering, we are not trying to fakely say that we are on their side, I think we are fine. There are ways to show that we are on their side by just saying that, hey, I've been in your place. I know how you feel. I wasn't vegan. I even mocked vegans before going vegan. So I feel how I understand where you're coming from. So it's okay to sympathize with them, but not trying to be fakely friendly and smile while these animals are being tortured. Did that answer the question? I hope it did.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Really great, really great. So much to talk about. Communication skills, just overall healthy communication skills count so much, especially when it comes to outreach conversations. So do we have, Faraz, do you see the question in the chat? You know,
yes.
I can read it from Uday.
Okay.
How would you advise to relate to those with a language barrier and around the university in general? And also, which social media have you personally used and had success on, and which type of content? I know you tweet a lot.
Yeah, for me,
well, you have good tweets.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the kind of advocacy that you do. I had the same issue with my mentee because it seems like TikTok is more popular, but also the kind of conversations there are just like trolls. So I'm testing a new thing, just turning off the comment section just to see how that goes. But it seems like YouTube, you have better, like more in-depth conversations. And Twitter, I guess it works better for me just because I guess it's a place for professionals to share ideas. And because of that, I think I have an advantage there. But to answer the first question, what was it? Oh, the language barrier. I know like nothing about like Spanish, but sometimes I have to do conversations in Spanish. If you do AV, there is there is like a card where you have like Spanish on the other side. Something you can do is your phone. If you have your phone with you, just open up Google Translate and you can talk to it. You can communicate that way. Of course, you can't go through everything, but you can at least get the very basis, I guess, get it across. I saw a question about humans being carnivore or omnivores or whatever, how you respond to that.
Nancy, you'll be next. I just want to let her know. You're next, Nancy. Go ahead and answer that question. That's a good question.
Okay, I'm sorry. But yeah, I think the best question to ask is, do you think it's possible to be vegan and healthy? Because a lot of people at that point say yes. And if they say no, then they're just ignorant. You can try to educate them. But some people already accept, no, it is possible. They're like, okay, argument done. So anything else that happens in nature is not a concern here. But there are a couple of things I just say very quick that like, bro, you can't even catch a squirrel, like without tools, you can't even catch a squirrel. Or if you really had the nature to eat animal products, then if you see a roadkill, that should be appetizing to you. We can talk about human anatomy, but I really rather not go there. and just keep it about, you know, do you think what's happening to animals is good? They say no. Do you think it's possible to be vegan? They say yes, or like, there you go. That's all you need to know.
Don't get distracted.
Yes.
But these are all great responses. I make a list and I remind myself of all the great responses. So Nancy, you have your hand up. Yes, I'll go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Thank you so much. This has been really, really helpful. I do the cubes and all the different protests and demonstrations. I also urge people, whenever I do a run in the morning and also in the afternoon, and anybody who's in my pathway, I stop a little breathless and take out a leaflet that says animals are not food, and writing on the back. And I also have a little film slip, just a little small piece of paper that has films on one side, 5 on Netflix, and then 9 or 10 on YouTube, and at the bottom, websites for recipes, and on the other side, all my favorite books. And everybody that I meet, and almost everyone in my neighborhood, I'm always surprised that somebody hasn't gotten one that I bump into, but every day, at least 10 in the morning and 10 in the afternoon. And I was wondering what your thoughts were about encouraging everybody to do that, you know, like wherever we are. I stop, you know, when a bus stops nearby me, or I have a stop there, the beginning of a route. All the bus drivers in my neighborhood, they all say, oh yeah, we get your leaflets are hanging on our bulletin boards and on the cafeteria tables. We call you the vegan woman. Hasn't she given you the leaflet yet? So, and if they've already gotten the leaflet, then I say, oh, which films have you seen? And what did you think about the leaflet? And I try to push them. If they say I'm too busy to watch films, you know, we'll take 5 minutes each night. Yes. and watch. So I keep, you know, each person that I meet and that I know over the last 10 years, I kind of just push them a little further. And I do say, that's great. You know, that's great that you're on the path. Please think of the victims and take it further. Take it all the way.
Absolutely. Any opportunity we get.
Oh, great. Glad you agree. Thank you.
Thank you. See, we all have so much to share with each other. Absolutely. So that's great. Yeah, I have business cards that I've made up as well, and I hand them out liberally all the time, front and back. I got them off of Vistaprint that I make with the websites and with resources for activism. So I'm looking to see if there's any more questions. I'm not seeing any. Unless if I've missed your question, quickly maybe retype it in the chat if it was there, or because we're going to wrap up shortly now. So I'm just going to give another minute, see if there is a last question, and then we'll probably wrap up. And I see Tamara with a question. Go ahead, unmute. Hello.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. My problem really with speaking about my veganism and my vegan journey is because I feel such an inadequate vegan myself. I think about all of the ways that I'm not a perfect vegan. And then, you know, it just kind of stops me from really speaking to others. Like I don't have a problem speaking. Here I am asking a question, even though I'm quite late to join. And I'm an attorney, so I'm talking all the time. But my own sort of self-criticism like blocks me often because, you know, my rug is still made out of wool. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And that's exactly what I was trying to refer to when I said, you know, a lot of times what's holding us back, it's actually ourselves and our insecurities and fears. We just have to let that go, and then we'll be brilliant. So I think your problem is that you think that the other people are just like other lawyers and they actually know how to argue. And if you are not perfect, neither are them. So you are a lawyer, you're a vegan, and your other side is talking about whether plants have feelings. So that's a level of argument do you think you can argue against that? If you can, then I think you're a good advocate, right? So the only thing something that I like about focusing on ethics rather than like medical aspects and environment is because if you talk about the environment, they're gonna say, oh, I read this other paper, and then this person said this person said that. With AV method, which is not unique to AV, but like when you talk about animal abuse, all you have to really realize is that, do you agree this is wrong? And that's really easy. That's why I love the way that AV starts, because we are not talking about how do you feel about the treatment of animals. It's all like, how do you feel about what's happening to these animals? That's all. So I think any genuine person would share their feelings honestly, and I think that's very effective. But yes, you can always polish your activism, but I don't think your problem is like not knowing how to argue, but it's just like being shy or just like being insecure because you think you're not going to be great. And I'm here to tell you that you will be. And what's the downside? You're going to screw it up 5 times, but then you eventually learn. Just, do you think I'm perfect? Every time I have a cube, I like criticize myself. I was like, I should have said this, I should have said that. So it never stops, but just push yourself a little harder, especially if you're a lawyer. Yeah, you're not talking with lawyers. You're talking, very simple things here. Do plants have feelings? That's a level of conversation here.
Thank you.
I love that quote. Veganism is not about being perfect. It's about doing the least amount of harm and the most amount of good. That's possible, practical, and possible. But Tamara, someone actually had a little question for you as a lawyer. I don't know if you don't mind answering it. And this one might be our last question of is a sign on a restaurant that says peace, love, bacon false and misleading advertising, implying something totally false? And if so, is it actionable in a lawsuit? I don't know if you have...
the sign says what? Peace, love, bacon? What?
Is a sign that says peace, love, bacon false and misleading? Or is it totally false? And if so, is it actionable in a lawsuit? I don't know if Laura wants to clarify that but
well, I mean, it's not false advertising. Is that what you're thinking? Because if they're serving bacon and they're saying peace, love, bacon, then in fact they're advertising exactly what they're doing. So it wouldn't be false. I mean, it would be false if they said, peace, love, vegan bacon, and you bit into it and you found out that it was in fact not vegan. That would be false. But if they're saying, we kill pigs and eat them here, that's pretty honest.
But when you can you hear me? When you say peace and love, and then the next word is bacon, you're implying, in my interpretation, that everything about bacon is peaceful and loving when the total opposite is the case. So you're sanitizing the reality of bacon.
I would agree with you ethically, but not legally.
Yes, I wish you wrote the laws, but it's not. The laws are not written by people like us. So as long as animal consumption is technically legal, that wouldn't be a false advertisement. And I'm sorry, I just want to answer to one more question because that's from Yuri, and he's
one more.
Okay, sorry. He's asking why focusing on colleges and universities to do outreach. And I think that's one reason is when I do the cubes inside the university, students are younger and they are so much more open-minded, and they have the entire career in front of them. They haven't decided what they want to do. So my goal is to actually train people who will become the future, Eric Adams, the future, Waynes, and influential people who go get powerful jobs. And so I think it's a very fundamental thing to focus on, not to mention that they're young, more open-minded, and all of that. And hi, Yuri.
Okay, so just in the interest of time, we'll let that be the last question, but just, do you have any just real final words, Dr. Faraz?
Let there be peace. No, no final thoughts. Just please, I'm proud of all of you for doing what you do. Literally just going out of your way, fighting for voiceless animals. And, you know, people like you are literally animals' last hope. So thank you for what you do. Just don't let anyone stop you. And even if you're not perfect, keep going. And if you need help, ask for help. And that's what AAM is here for.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for being an AAM mentor. And all right, so hold on, everybody. Don't leave yet, because I just want to do a little wrap up and a couple of announcements. So our next workshop is on Thursday, February 9th. It's at an unusual time, which is going to be 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I hope you can join us. It is an Unnatural Order, The Roots of Our Destruction of Nature, with author Jim Mason, author of this book. His program will be based on his book of the same title, and he has co-authored a couple of books with Peter Singer. So join us. More workshops to be announced. We do have regular workshops every month. Please invite your friends and join us. And again, please check out previous workshops. They're all archived on our YouTube channel. You can binge watch all of them over and over again and share them with your friends. And while you're on our YouTube channel, please subscribe, because that really helps us out, helps us reach more people. I'd also like to announce our 2023 live events, in-person events. The AAM Washington, D.C. Week of Action is taking place March 14th through the 20th, 2023. It's coming up. And the Colorado Convergence is taking place in and around Denver. The dates are June 24th through July 1st, 2023. And also, we haven't firmed it up yet, but there will likely be a Cincinnati, Ohio, also convergence in September. That will probably be. We'll keep you posted. But no experience is required, but registration is required, especially if you want to stay in the Airbnb with us. So you can find all that information on our Facebook page and on our website, or you can ask any mentor. So that wraps up another AAM workshop. Thank you, Faraz, for your time and wisdom. Thank you all for being here and the tireless work you're doing for the animals. If you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee or want to get involved, please reach out to any AAM mentor or visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com. Please consider becoming a patron by finding AAM on Patreon. And if you'd like to be added to our newsletter list, drop your email. You can private message it to me if you want in the chat, and I'll add you to our email list. How's that all sound? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Stay strong and live vegan. Thanks, everyone.